Tansei, welcome to Soul Medicine, Ancient Psychologies for Wellness. I am your host, Dr. Carly Fellner, psychologist and member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. As always, feel free to pick up what fits for you and to leave what doesn't. I'm just here to present a different way of understanding mental health and wellness. This podcast is not intended to provide or take the place of professional advice. If you or someone you know is in need of mental health supports, please reach out to one of the many resources available in your area or to a trusted professional. All details and potentially identifying information about Manitowoc people who I've worked with have been changed to maintain their anonymity and privacy. Dustin Walter is Amskapi Piikani, South Pagan from Montana, one of the 4 tribes of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Dustin has a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and Masters of Education in Educational Research from the University of Calgary, with a focus on Blackfoot wellness practices. Dustin is a 4th-year doctoral student in Community Health Sciences, specializing in population and public health at the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. His research focus is Indigenous healing and approaches to trauma work and the implementation of these approaches in supporting holistic wellness. Dustin is also a singer-songwriter and SAG-AFTRA actor and filmmaker. The songs that he experienced growing up on the reservation and throughout his life have taught him to be in touch with his Blackfeet world. As a passionate storyteller, Dustin is honored to pass along his musical teachings and cultural knowledge to the next generation. I'm super excited to have Dustin Walter with us today. He's like a brother to me and has a lot of wisdom to share with us. Dustin, I'm just going to pass it over to you to introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Okay. Nixokua. Akit kinatsamat sa mopua nukatsitsikoi. Anakoka Dustin Walter. Nitsi sitapinskatsin sikstakina. Nidok sitapi Amskapi Piikani. Nidok Bab, Montana. I said, hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and thankfully welcome you all. I am known as Dustin Walter, but my real name in Blackfoot is Beaver Chief. And I come to you today from the Amskapi Piikani Nation, or the Blackfeet Nation in Montana. And my hometown is Bab, Montana. I'm really excited to be here as well because I always get excited when I get to talk about our culture and our kibata piece in Blackfoot, our way of life.
Well, I'm super excited to talk to you too. Dustin and I have known each other for 8 years now, and we've had a lot of amazing conversations over that time about, our Inuak Indigenous approaches to wellness and healing and Indigenous psychotherapies and all of that. So when I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking about how so far we've been having a lot of conversations about some of the philosophies underlying Inuak Indigenous psychologies and how we understand when people are facing difficulty and challenges and what are labeled as symptoms, and how we understand some of the process of healing and wellness. But we haven't yet really dove into what does it look like when we're engaging in that process of healing, especially for, the collective, for the generations, for all of our relations. And I know that you and I have had a lot of conversations about that over the years. So I knew you were the person to ask.
Maybe I could talk a little bit about my own journey. I came from a very wild childhood and teenage years and reservation life. I've lived on a reserve my entire life, so I was caught up in a lot of the addictive behaviors, alcohol and drugs and things like that in my own life. And how I came to know about my own spirituality and cultural teachings and things like that was I had to set out on the journey in order to find an elder and make those approaches and find guidance about what it looks like to live and be happy in my own skin. That's a lot of the things that people are struggling with. Well, I have this, but I have to rely on something else. And I really wanted something that was no more in my life. I was done with chemicals. I was done with things that were fulfilling things in my life that I felt I was still missing. They still leave that hole. And I really found it through Bata piece in our Blackfoot way of life. A lot of that is like joining societies, I was captured by the Kanatsumi Takes, the Crazy Dog Society, and they brought me into this different way of life, and we made a vow not to use alcohol or drugs, to be good role models in the community, and so much is about living the example. Be the light you want to see in the world. And I learned that through society and through asemoitskan, we say a prayerful way. And another thing that I think is really important to mention is it kind of shifted my paradigm shift, if you will. Very popular term, but it was something in my own head where I was in America, and it's very much a capitalist society. It's all about fencing off your individual portions. And I was a rancher, so I had bought into that pretty heavily. And what I learned through our prayerful ways of life, the elders would tell me, well, I don't know how to pray. I would ask them, how do I go about it? And they'd say, well, you just have to be mindful that we pray for the collective. We pray for everyone's well-being. We don't really go in there and say, I need this, I want that. Hey, God, can I get a new car? None of that kind of talk. It's all about this idea of service and this idea of fulfilling something in others, which will then in turn fill in you. And I was a nurse. I went to Montana State University and got my bachelor's of science in nursing. And I was an ambulance person before that, working EMS since the 90s. So I've been in healthcare a long time. And I always felt the need to try to help someone, right? And help other people. Had this draw to do it. And so by me going in and following our Blackfoot spirituality and our Blackfoot way of life, it led me right home, right to where I needed to be, so that I don't even think about addictive behaviors. It's not part of my life because that doesn't help anyone, including myself. I'm supposed to be more mindful of the collective and considerate of others. And that really helped me in my life, live a good life. In the times of addiction and things like that, I had a very bad temper. I was always yelling and cursing a lot. And now that doesn't fulfill me. That dopamine release we get from those kind of activities of yelling and cursing and things like that, I found other places that I get the dopamine release within satisfaction within my community. And I see it in the faces of my foster children and grandchildren and things like that. That's where the dopamine release really comes from. And then I'm fulfilled, and our ways are very kind. And that's something we always should really mention. Is that was another thing I first came to, was the idea of kimapipitsin, that we do everything with kindness. We don't immediately jump to react. We don't immediately try to argue and hurt one another's feelings, because that's not living in a kind way. I think that's really an important thing, that people may be apprehensive to pursue their native spirituality, whether it be because they were baptized in Christian belief systems or things like that. But I think you can, we create a balance in our life that fulfills us. In every addictions treatment model I've ever seen, it says we have to find a higher power, right? Whether it be 12-step programs or white bison, there's a power greater than ourselves, right? And I was very much on the fence about this too. I was a bit of an agnostic about it, because I was learning to deal with these two worlds and create the balance in between the two. And I was able to really come to it through our spirituality, because our spirituality is so kind. I made space for the Christianity too, and I made space for kibatipis and asemoitskan, our way of life with prayer. I learned to mold these two things together and not necessarily blend them, but create a third thing that is mine, and I've been very blessed to have a partner, a wife that supports me in all of that, and who's very spiritual as well. And I think that's important to note as well, because there again, we're talking about balance. And whatever balance fulfills you, whatever that looks like, it could be for some people it's a pet, but it's the yin to their yang, if you say.
Yeah. When I hear you talk, it makes me think about my journey as well, with connecting and with finding my way to wellness in ways that I didn't even really realize that I wasn't well at the time. And for me too, it was finding community, which I think so many people are missing now, and knowing that community means many, many different things. Because I think sometimes out there, some people might think that community is something that's already established, and if you're not part of it,
then you're not part of a community. But community takes so many different shapes, and it's something that we also create as we go. And for me, the first time I found that place and that real sense of community was within an urban context and connecting in, with Alana and with Fred John and folks who were doing ceremony around the greater Vancouver area. And that's also what struck me most deeply, was just that unconditional love. It was the first time in my life, I think, I experienced within kind of a social context this unconditional kindness. And I know it's not always that way because people are dealing with their own stuff. But those are the teachings, right? That is how we are meant to be. And that's the first time I experienced that. Up until that point in my life, everything was conditional. It was all conditional on performance and how you're acting and just being a certain way in order to like meet the standard and be quote unquote good enough for whoever it is that's setting that standard. And for me, experiencing that love, which was really the unconditional love of spirit coming through these humans, through these people, that was totally transformative for my life. Just a complete game changer. But I often think about, yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there, they don't know how to find that community, how to find those spaces of true care and true love.
Yeah, and it can be difficult. I don't know how I've been so blessed to have these teachers that just are so kind and all giving. They don't hold nothing back. And then they in turn become my parents and my grandparents and things like that. And we structure a whole new family from these ceremonial spaces. They're a family. And I come to rely on them daily because they understand the idea of the collective too. They understand the idea of what kindness brings to all of us and how it's interwoven, not only in between personal human relationships, but with the grass and the land and the animals, how it all flows through us. All these energies just flow right through, back and forth. And that would be some of the advice when they're seeking out an elder for them is notice those energies as they're flowing through and things like that, and don't settle on just one stop. There's more elders out there. The late Mukwepukit, Bruce Wolfchild, my elders from the blood reserve. That's what he said. He said, you'll have many elders in your life. You just have to keep working through them and you'll hear different perspectives and you'll learn and gain more and more knowledge. And what you're doing is filling your toolkit, right? And filling yourself with different information systems that are really profound. And yeah, and don't stop. Make it your life's work. Work it like a job because it's that important, especially for those caught in addiction right now. Don't give up. They're out there. Keep talking to them, but you have to be receptive of what they're going to say too. You can't just wait and talk to people to tell you what you want to hear either, right? Because these guys are very good at reading problems and things like that too. So I think it's just stay in Blackfoot we say "Axistoi bite bios." Live your life to rise to the challenge. Stay resilient in the face of challenges. That's what that kind of means. Sometimes you can feel like an outsider, especially for people like me who are white passing, and light skin. You have to have thick skin too, because they're going to tease you. If they don't tease you, that means they don't like you. But the teasing is how they show you they love you. I know it's weird, but it's a very indigenous thing everywhere I've went.
Mm-hmm.
Every indigenous community I've worked all over. And it's very important that if they ain't teasing you, you have to know that there's something the matter because that's how we get along. That's how we interact.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. One of the things I was thinking as you were sharing, it reminded me about the unconditional love of the land. I've talked about it in the podcast before, that colonialism has a pretty explicit intent of disconnecting people from land and community, right? And so that's why we are where we are today. We're folks of all different backgrounds different places of the globe are feeling those disconnections unless they've been able to maintain those ways of living, despite colonialism's best attempts to separate that. But a lot of folks do experience and feel that disconnection and that separation. And there's a huge loneliness in that, a tremendous loneliness. And I used to experience that loneliness so deeply. Like, it's just incredibly painful. A critical shift for me was leaning into the unconditional love of the land. And that was something I've had different mentors teach me about. And even the knowledge holders in my dissertation work talked about that the sun shines on everyone equally. The water provides for everybody equally. The plants, the animals, they provide for everyone equally. There's no one who's higher than any other. And that's a pure giving. Again, it comes back to what you were talking about being in service and that relationship that the land has with us, the land gives to us. And of course, we're meant to live in reciprocity and be giving back to the land as well and experience that love both ways, that gratitude both ways, and realizing and acknowledge the abundance around us, because that's where that unconditional love comes from. It flows through the land. It flows through spirit, whether that's God, the creator, the universe, whatever it is that people believe in or however they understand that, there's that unconditional love that comes through. And so even when we don't have the people, we always have the land. We always have access to whatever that life force is. We always have access to that and to the love of that, and really leaning into land. And sometimes that's where I've had to go because I didn't have people. I didn't have community. I was lucky to find community at a time that I did. And then I relocated to a place where I didn't know anybody and I didn't have access to community in the same way. It was a totally different context. And what I found was I was going out to the mountains all the time, just by myself, going to the mountains. And that's where I was finding that company. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not alone. It's actually not possible ever to be alone. But it took a lot of like deprogramming for me to realize that I'm not alone, actually. I'm surrounded by abundance and love, and there's so much here. I was just taught by the mainstream system not to see that, right? Or not to experience that.
Yeah, and just singing right on that same song is like, I was just thinking back to I was very fortunate to be raised in Bab, Montana, and that's a Glacier National Park. So I was surrounded in the mountains. My dad was a trapper. I lived in the land, but I was, we're at the time we're getting into television. So then you start looking in that programming that they do to you on television, and the capitalists, you need all of this plastic stuff. You need, in order to have a good life, you have to have that. And as a kid, I always had a horse and a dog. So I'd be out in the hills by myself. Like, I'm thinking by myself, I'm out here all alone. And I rode upon cow elk and brand new baby calf elks and things like that, 5 feet away from me. When I think about, I was all by myself. I used to think that way, but now I think back on it, now that I've been reprogrammed, if you will. And I was like, holy cow, I had everything there. I had all of this company. I had a great horse who was my best friend, and a great dog who's my other best friend, and the wild animals and the hills and those ancient grandfather rocks that have been there since time immemorial, and have seen so much. Now I create space for those things. To put my hand and swim that horse across a beaver dam, that water cooling us off, there was never fear, because it felt like the water was holding us up too. We don't realize in this day and age about just slowing down and seeing what's around us and being really aware and intentional. And in therapy, we always refer to it as a grounding and doing all of this kind of thing, right? Because we're just trying to get the people to feel this grass. This is so awesome. And those are the things that save and nurture and hold me to this day. Anywhere you can get to the grass, I got to get to the grass. I got to get to some water, do something. I have to ground myself no matter where I'm at. And that's another secret to living in this life, that is to help absorb it. I don't want to say own it, but we absorb these things. And it's just like now we're just so worried about getting to that Starbucks, then we got to go over here and get, a new charger and some headphones and all of these things. This plastic world, I was so fortunate to be fulfilled through the mountains and the animals. And it's probably what drove me to take on a bundle, a Blackfoot beaver bundle that, is all about celebrating nature. In that bundle, it's all the animals of creation that brought their songs, what we believe in. There's a lot of story to it, but I think that's what brought me to it. Is as a kid, we were trapping beaver and mink and pine martens and lynx and bobcats, all these kind of things. And they're all in the beaver bundles, and it honors them. We believe in, if their hides in there, they live forever, and that we honor them. And I really wanted to do that. I was drawn to it. And so my wife and I, we held a beaver bundle for 7 years, 8 years actually, by the time that we transferred it. But that was really fulfilling, because then we were able to do service for our people through our teachings, through ancient songs that were passed down through generations and generations. And I got to be a part of that. Even when I was just attending beaver bundle ceremonies before I even got a bundle, I was just blown away about how profound, how ancient the songs were, and how the stories still live on because we carry them along in these songs. Then we tell the story that goes around it. These animals and experiences in the wild. We honor the trees, the water, the animals, of every kind, everybody's song. And it feels like I'm giving back or holding something up for my people. And I could have just been a general member and still have those same feelings. That's kind of the point, because we're all part of it. It's all part of our creation. And for Indigenous people, I think that's something that's very profound. I know a lot of times you go to the ceremonies and you kind of just sit there and wonder what's going on. But as you learn and keep going, don't get discouraged, all of it will be shown to you in the right time. Because Tabatapip knows, the Creator knows the right time. We're just living in it.
Yeah, and I just think about another fundamental difference between the ways we're programmed to think in mainstream society and then returning to these Inuak teachings and knowledges is that, again, the abundance narrative in contrast with the scarcity narrative, which is that narrative that's part of colonialism, part of capitalism, that you don't have enough, you need more, these things are wrong with you, and because this is wrong with you, this is what you need. And it drives this entire system, right? And I've spoken about that in other episodes of the podcast too. But I just think about what you're talking about finding that meaning and purpose through service, and how it's so different because we're taught to accumulate, we're taught to try to receive, to get. And again, within our Inuak philosophies, our Indigenous understandings, it's no, we give in good ways, right? When we're giving from a place of service, we really are taken care of. It comes back to that natural law. So there's never this fear of giving something away. There's whole ceremonies that are about giving things away. And there was always that understanding that the more you give, the more that's going to come back to you as well. And that's not the reason people do it, but there's that inherent trust and that faith and that knowing that I'm going to be taken care of. So I don't need to be afraid to give. And that's actually part of our meaning and purpose. I remember training as a therapist, and it's funny because I think back, because I too would have been an agnostic. I always said like, oh, I don't believe in, God, creator, or anything like that. Although I always said I do feel something in the mountains. That was always my thing, my little asterisk. But I do feel something when I'm in the mountains. So there was some acknowledgement of something there. This was many, many years ago. But I remember like learning about existentialism and being drawn into existentialism and just thinking back on it. The philosophies are all about like life doesn't have any meaning, doesn't have any purpose. Inherently, we need to create it. So there's like a good message in there, but you can just see the contrast of like, actually, no, we come into this world with purpose, with gifts that we are meant to share with the world, all of us, every single one of us. And that's meant to be shared with generosity. And we, in turn, will also receive through others' generosity and the generosity of spirit in the land, right?
Yeah. And a good example of that, last summer, I sat Okan, I sat Holy, and I had a big camp to put up. And I talked to one of my friends, John Gillum, and I said, "Do you have any teepees? I got some people coming in from out of town. They want to sleep in a teepee. Can you help me with the camp?" That evening, he showed up with 5 teepees, put them all up. I mean, I didn't need near that many, but they put them up, and we put people in them. Yeah, and at the end of the thing, they came out to get their teepees, and I was thinking to myself, like, "Oh goodness, I got to give him something. He did me a real solid there. I got to give him something." So I go over to the car and I'm rifling through all of my stuff, and I come upon a white buckskin beaded necktie that Shelly and Barbara had both worked on for one of my gifts from the Ocon, and I cherished it. I loved it so much. Oh, it's so beautiful. But I come to it and I looked at it, and Shelly, my wife, who made it, was standing next to me, and I said, "Oh, this is all I got, but I love it. I don't want to give it away. I love it." And then she looked at me and she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "That's why you give it away." Right? And that's very touching, and well, made me cry. So I run over there and give it to him. Absolutely. Because she just has this blind faith, right? 100% unwavering that we will be given back anything we give in those kind of situations. And it's appropriate. And it's only appropriate that a lifelong friend, of course, he needs the best gift too. So much about it just brought me back to time, grounded me, because you can still fall into that trap of materialism and things like that. You still can today. That was a prime example of it. But I love it. That's why you give it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very moving.
Yeah, exactly. It carries so much medicine by virtue of the love you have for it, right? I remember being in a ceremony just over 10 years ago or so with a young woman, and she was talking about how she doesn't have an eagle feather. She'd never been given an eagle feather, and I was like, "Oh man." I had the first eagle feather I'd ever been gifted with me, and I was like, "I've got to give it to her." And there was that part of me that's like, "Oh, but I really don't want to." That's my
Mm-hmm.
first eagle feather, right? But that, of course, like that's the reason. I mean, how beautiful for her to be given the same feather that was the first feather that was given to me. So it was really hard to part with, but I gifted that to her, and sure enough, it was within the next couple weeks I was given 3 feathers. So just they came, right? And that's kind of how it happens. It's really beautiful, and it makes me think of a teaching that the late Fred John, one of my teachers, gave me just about generosity with folks who are really struggling and are living on the streets. He said, if you see people like that and you have money with you, like just give them some money. He said it's not up to us to judge or to say, or it's not going to be used in a good way, things like that you hear that come again from more that mainstream programming. He said, no, you just give from that same place of love that spirit gives. I remember that was a huge teaching for me at the time, and it's just so beautiful because you're sharing your medicine with others, and that medicine brings them wellness. It's more than whatever the material thing is.
Yeah, I remember one time we had a sibling that was really struggling with addiction, and everybody was avoiding her. Everybody was ducking and diving, hitting everybody up for money and things like that. And I was feeling kind of pitiful for her. I was feeling sorry for her. And I talked to I went to the Moto Keys. They were having their camp, and I talked to one of those women in there and asked for guidance on the Buffalo Women's Society. I'm sorry, that's what that is. I went and talked to one of the gals, and she said, I said, "What do I do about this? I'm feeling bad about avoiding this person and this and that." And she said, "Well, just stop doing that." As she said, "You don't have to give money if you don't have it. You don't have to do any of that. But what you can do is be happy to see them every time they come around the corner, and you be kind to them through the conversation and tell them that you love them when they leave." Again, that's it. Doesn't need to be any more patronizing, saving.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be any of that. You
Yeah.
be kind. You be happy to see them when you see them. Kind to them while you're visiting, and tell them you love them when you leave.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't have to be a car, any of that stuff, because what you're giving there is true sentiment. And that really hit home, because then it was easy. Keep
Yeah.
it simple. Oh, I don't have any money, but I'm happy to see you. And then the day turns around for them too, because in a lot of they're always, oh, I need money, this and that. No, let's just uplift one another. We're gonna help one another right now. Lift one another up. And
I've always said that in my perspective, I truly believe that one of the strongest, most powerful medicines we have to offer as human beings is love. Again, being in a society that has so much messaging around you're not good enough for this, that, and the other reason, to actually have a human towards you be like, I love you. Just, that's it, right? Point blank. It's so incredibly powerful, and it can be a game changer. That was actually the first finding, the primary finding that came out of my dissertation work many moons ago, many suns ago, was love was like first and foremost the most important thing for people to bring into their work with mental health. And again, that was a game changer for me, because I had come through training programs that taught us, like, oh, if you get someone coming in for session and they're drunk or they're being rude to you, even if they're sober, whatever, like you set your boundary and you tell them to leave. And it's like, no, we can't be doing that. Certainly on the front lines of attempted genocide with our folks in community and our people who've been through so much. But really, with anybody, we shouldn't really be doing that unless there's a safety concern, a genuine safety concern. That's a different story. I shifted the way that I practice to be able to just be with people where they're at, to respect them, and to have that acknowledgement, spirit to spirit. We are in this journey together as human beings, and regardless of all the things that you're going through and what's happening in your life, like, I'm here with you. I'm totally here with you. And there's a genuine love there. It gets interesting using that term in the context of mental health practice, because the term has been so warped and shifted within a dominating mainstream paradigm, the way the word love is used and how it gets kind of adulterated through that use. But when you understand love from that pure, unconditional kinship perspective, it's real. And it's like, that's what I feel with the people that I work with, right? It's like, we're in this together. We're relatives, we're brothers, we're sisters, aunties, uncles, nephews, nieces. We're in this life together, in this planet together, and these challenges together.
yeah, and it's proven. Like, I think that's probably why we have such recidivism problems and things like that, because they weren't held with love and kindness when they were originally treated. You know what I mean? So how are we going to get over that? Treat them with love and kindness. Take home. You don't need any books. You don't need any extra training. Treat them with love and kindness.
Yeah.
And everything can be solved. And that's why I believe that I was so fortunate, is what love and kindness people showed me. You know what I mean? And acceptance and all the things that happen that go along with that. And that it's so, yeah, the take home of all of that is like, how do we improve our numbers? Love and kindness. you know and we all know when we're being used, especially in those kind of situations. You know what I mean? We know how to keep our guard up, but still we can treat them with love and kindness while addressing those problems, manipulation, all of that, right? Treat them with love and kindness too. Oh, you almost got me there, but you know what I mean? And figure out a way to work with it. And we need to really focus on that, not just as, take away that we're counselors, take away that we're working with people, just kind human beings to one another in the grocery store. And I mean, we've all had terrible hard days, and so you see them people having them hard days. I make a conscious effort, get the door for them. Hey, can I help you with those bags? you know and it's more than just being of service and sitting in AA meetings or running groups, any of that. We can be it every day in every way. We could be nice and patient with those other drivers, because we don't know what they're going through. What if their mom's dying at the hospital and it's their last chance to talk to her? I can make space for that. You
Mhm.
know, it's one of those things. Slow down and create space for everyone to
Yeah.
be fulfilled.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that sometimes gets missed, and again, it comes back to the either or thinking that happens in the English language, right? It's a
Mm,
trap of the English language and other languages that have similar structures, these noun based structures,
mm,
where there's this logic of if it's not this, then it's this. There's this either or thinking. And again, one of the most transformative paradigm shifts for me was learning about the and, which I learned about through Indigenous focusing oriented therapy. That was the first time I heard it explicitly articulated. And so it's that and of love and accountability, and knowing that accountability is actually part of love,
mm,
right? And what often happens in the either or English thinking brain is that either I'm being loving and I'm not having any boundaries at all, and I'm doing things at my own expense and my own detriment that's actually causing harm to me and my family. Or I'm being super thick skinned, boundaried, hard, like, nope, not going there. It doesn't need to be either of those. There is this beautiful space of and where we're coming from a place of love, and knowing that holding people accountable is part of love, because accountability is what helps people to be well. I remember one of the other Kitiaya who's taught me, one of my elders, she was telling me that in some communities, and this was in the States, in another location, they have men that hold these particular bundles. And if they're not living well, and this isn't about mistakes, because people make
mhm.
mistakes. We're not meant to be perfect. That's different than doing something over and over that you know is causing harm. That's not a mistake anymore. You're choosing that behavior. And in those particular societies, those bundles are taken until the person holds themselves accountable to their behavior and says, oh, okay, sorry, I'm going to do something to shift this and walk in a good way. And to me, when I hear that, I hear love, what it can look like to have boundaries and be loving at the same time. What you see in treatment centers, what you see even in a lot of mental health, especially in psychiatric facilities and things like that, there tends to be a more authoritarian approach. There's control. Where's the love there, right? But it also can't just be love without healthy boundaries.
And you notice so much of the power dynamic, like in doctors' offices. He's standing over you with a clipboard whilst you sit here, and I mean, it's just this weird dynamic. There's no balance there whatsoever, and that doesn't promote loving environment for anything.
Yeah.
Just it promotes this dominating. I'm controlling the situation. You have no say. You take this pill. You
Mm-hmm.
come back and see me in 3 weeks, whatever that looks like, regular health or mental health or whatever it is. The whole system is not designed to be welcoming. That's why when I go out and work with health systems, I'm trying to figure out a way to create that dynamic to where we're equals when we sit there. So we arrange rooms accordingly with chairs beside one another and all of these kind of different things to be alongside and support as healthcare providers. It never happens. It's always them on that side of the table talking down or standing talking down. And there's just lots of things that we could help with in this day and age, within especially with helping Indigenous populations with healthcare issues and things like that, because nobody likes going to the principal's office, and it's very much like that when they have to go to the doctor. Why haven't you been taking care of your blood sugar? Have you been drinking again? And it becomes this thing too, because the doc's trying to look out for their well-being too, but we need to figure out a better way of communicating. Indigenizing health is more than just putting a smudge bowl in the lobby. That's something that we need to get into the meat of it and work on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really about getting out of those hierarchies of power. And that's
Mm,
something that's been completely and entirely created through a colonial paradigm. These hierarchies of power that some people are better than, others are less than. Coming out of that into Inuak Indigenous perspectives globally is coming into the circle and having those understandings. Everybody has gifts, and each of those gifts are just as important as the other gifts, and nobody is superior and nobody is inferior. I often think about one of the damaging pieces of a colonial project has been convincing people that we don't have our own power, that we need these doctors, these psychologists, psychiatrists, we need X, Y, and Z in order to help ourselves. And don't get me wrong, of course, we're meant to go to others for help. That's part of the collective. That's part of the community. We go to those who have other gifts to help us. However, the shift is in acknowledging that we have our own power also to heal ourselves, our families, our communities, that we are just as gifted as that doctor or just as gifted as that billionaire or whoever might be being held as being the superior sort of human. We have just as many gifts. Our gifts might be different, but we have those gifts. And acknowledging that and acknowledging our power. There's so much healing that we're actually able to do for ourselves in relation, because we always have the land there. We always have spirit there. We always have access to the wisdom of our ancestors and the coming generations. So we're not even alone in that. We're always interconnected into those gifts as well.
Yeah, and those gifts can be recognized when they're very young children. That's the whole idea of this elder system, that everybody has to be ancient or old and things like that. But there's younger people now that are having the knowledges, and our ways are growing. You know what I mean? So I'm very hopeful in all of that kind of stuff that we're going to keep going. I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about hierarchies. This is very much like the caste system. And these little caste roles are affecting within the reserve style stuff. It is this hierarchy of power that they were inherently born into. And things like that was all garbage. The poorest person could be the best cardiothoracic surgeon in the world tomorrow. And you don't have to be born into anything. I think we're starting to see, especially in Indian country, of being mindful of the people's gifts. You know, song, singers, and painters. Before the era of enlightenment, there was the Dark Ages, and everybody bubonic plague, everybody died, all this stuff. Then they had this era of enlightenment where all the arts and crafts. I believe that us Indians have gone through our Dark Ages as well. I believe it's our time for Renaissance, when it's our artists, our singers, our actors. We're doing it already. I believe it's our time as Indigenous people to start showing our beauty as well. It's enough of that old narrative where you're less than us. This whole caste idea, throw it out the window. No, we're equals. We have something to offer. This is the reality of it, and I'm very excited for what's to come.
Absolutely. And it's like those strong, deeply, firmly rooted roots that are behind all of that too. I was listening to another podcast called Dreaming the Ancestors. They talk about Celtic and Gaelic revitalization and bringing back their cultures and languages. And I remember there was a guest on there from Wales saying that they always talk about how British people are cut off at the roots. And when I heard that, I was like, that's it. That's what colonialism has been doing to people since the Roman Empire and even before. And this is just in our sphere of the world. There's other empires globally that have colonized in other parts of the world as well. But just noticing that cutting off at the roots is the key thing. I even think about, I had a great grandpa who was from Poland. And when he came over, he had to change his last name from the Polish last name to an anglicized name. And just looking at all the ways that even my European ancestors were cut off at the roots, and then also having my ancestors who are indigenous to these places that attempt to cut off at the roots. And the thing that we really have is that people are still very connected into their roots, which there are in other parts of the world too. But that's where I see, like you're talking about, that Renaissance coming forward with these deep roots behind it too, that the world needs, because people are now seeking that. I think a lot of people who have been cut off at the roots are starting to feel like they're seeking, and they might be looking to other people's cultures for guidance, but the answers lie within their own roots. And what are the teachings? Where are the roots? They're in the land for all of us. Go to the land. The land will teach you. That's where every indigenous language, culture, song, ceremony came from. was the land to these particular places globally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's woven all through us. That's why Indigenous people were so, especially as Blackfoot people, we are so rooted in place. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Chief Mountain, you know, I think about these places, Abato Sikimi, you know, Waterton, these lakes and things in this area that have held us, and we relied on it. And like you say, very much, the roots are still here, right?
A beautiful reminder, and just to follow your spirit, your gut, your intuition, however it is that you think of it. Listen to the call, follow the call, and trust. If you feel that pull to go somewhere, to get outside, to go to the water, go to the mountains, go to a certain location, follow that and just see what happens, because there's something there. The land is speaking to you. That's how it speaks to us. It can't talk to us in human language, so it comes through our spirit. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next full moon.